The Senate is back in order. We are on order of business 9. Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under Order of Business 9, I would move to take Senate Bills 269, 296, 302, 315, 318, and 323 from their place on general file and place them on general file for the next legislative day.
If there are no objections, so ordered. Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also under Order of Business 9, I would move to take Senate Bill number 352 from its place on general file and place it on the Secretary's desk for the purposes of an amendment.
If there are no objections, so ordered. We are now on Order of Business 13.
Senate Bill 262, introduced by Senators Flores, et cetera, and Assemblywoman Gonzalez, et cetera, revises the qualifications for membership on certain advisory councils and boards. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none. Section 5, this act becomes effective upon passage and approval. End of bill.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 262 eliminates the requirement that a member of a town advisory board or citizens advisory council be a qualified elector.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will... Senator Gokachia.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 262, and just because of how it was explained, that you don't have to be a qualified elector to be on the ballot, I have to oppose the bill. Thank you.
Any other remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Does anyone wish to change their vote? Secretary will close the roll. We have 13 yeas, 8 nays. SB 262 has received the constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 272, introduced by Senators Spearman, et cetera, revises provisions relating to governmental administration. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none. Section 5, this act becomes effective on July 1, 2023. End of bill.
Senator Spearman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 272 requires each state agency or local government to on or before September 1 of each year post in a conspicuous place on its website 1. The total number of purchasing contracts, performance contracts, and contracts for public works awarded by the state agency or local government during the immediately preceding fiscal year. 2. The total dollar amount of all such contracts awarded by the state agency or local government during the immediately preceding fiscal year. 3, the total number of contracts awarded by the state agency or local government during the immediately preceding fiscal year to minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and LGBTQ-owned businesses, and the total dollar amount of all such contracts awarded by the state agency or local government during the immediately preceding fiscal year to minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and the LGBTQ-owned businesses. The bill is effective on July 1, 2023. And I just want to add a few comments. There may be some who disagree with posting this information, but here's the thing that I know. We're always talking about equality, but we can never prove it. And what this bill is doing is saying if you're already doing it, you ought to be proud that you're doing it. Because one of the things that happened during COVID, in addition to recognizing, the entire world recognizing how different the healthcare agency or healthcare system was for people, minority people, BIPOC, women, single women. One of the things that it did was it also showed us that these are some of the businesses that needed the money and didn't get the money. And so my thing is, if you're already doing this, you ain't got no problem with this bill. People got a problem with the bill, people who are not doing it. And so we're talking about the people who have already stepped out there on faith, as it were, and have a business, and all they're asking for is fair treatment. You don't give them the contract because they're a member of these communities. You give them the contract in spite of the fact that they're members of this community. So I urge my colleagues to vote yes. Thank you.
Are there any comments from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Does anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, Secretary will close the roll. We have 15 yeas, 6 nays. This is SB 272 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 289, introduced by Senator Wynne, revises provisions relating to crimes against providers of health care. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none. Section 2 into Section 2 under bill.
Senator Wynne.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 289 expands the definition of the term provider of health care to include behavioral analysts, assistant behavior analysts, registered behavior technicians, mental health technicians, student of emergency medical services, public safety officers, or any other person who is employed by or volunteers at healthcare facilities for the purposes of including these persons among healthcare providers against whom a battery while on the premises of a healthcare facility carries enhanced penalties. I'd urge my colleagues to support this bill. We've seen during the last 3 years that our frontline workers also include these medical professionals that are working in hospital settings. And I think this bill goes a long way to show them that we appreciate and we care about what they are doing in a healthcare facility and what they are doing to help our individuals that are coming there. And when they are injured and targeted because of their positions as nurses and behavior technicians and emergency medical students, that we are standing by them. So thank you.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Does anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Ayes are 21, the nays are 0. SB 289 has received the constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 299, introduced by Senators Flores, et cetera, and Assemblywoman Torres, et cetera, revises provisions related to monorails. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 3 into Section 3 under bill.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 299 requires the payment of prevailing wages on any work, construction, alteration, repair, or other employment performed, undertaken, or carried out by, for any railroad company or any person operating the same, regardless of whether a public body is a party to the contract. Similarly, the work of or incident to the installation and operation of a monorail may be subject to prevailing wage requirements.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Does anyone wish to change their vote? The Secretary will close an order to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 322, introduced by Senators Stone, et cetera, and Assemblyman Yurick, et cetera, revises provisions relating to reckless driving. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 4 of this act becomes effective on July 1, 2023, and a bill.
Senator Stone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, colleagues. This bill was written in response to a horrific incident in my district in the city of Henderson when 13-year-old Rex Padgett was innocently walking in a school zone when an irresponsible, reckless driver who was driving almost 100 miles an hour and lost control of his car, striking Rex and killing him instantly. Rex's father reached out to me and Assemblyman Yurick after we were elected, and he painfully gave us the details of the accident. When we found out that the perpetrator was sentenced to 1 to 6 years and may only serve 1 year in prison, we all concluded that the punishment doesn't match the crime. This bill increases the penalty from 1 to 10 years if a person is driving over 50 miles an hour above the speed limit posted or occurring in a school zone or a pedestrian zone. Please join me in supporting this bill that, if passed and signed into law, will help protect our citizens from such senseless, reckless acts. This bill will become effective on July the 1st, 2023. Thank you for your consideration.
Any remarks from the floor? Senator Scheibel.
Maybe get a 1-minute recess.
We have a 1-minute recess. The Senate is back in order. We are on SB 322. Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. Ayes are 21, the nays 0. SB 322 has received the constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 338, introduced by Senator Flores, revises provisions relating to off-highway vehicles. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1 and Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 14 and Section 14 and a bill.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 338 revises the definition of large all-terrain vehicle as any all-terrain vehicle that includes seating capacity for at least 2 people abreast.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Does anyone wish to change their vote? Secretary, close the roll. The ayes are 21, the nays 0. SB 338 has received the constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 363, introduced by Senators Spearman, et cetera, and Assemblyman De Silva, revises provisions relating to affordable housing. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1 and Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. End of bill.
Senator Spearman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 363 authorizes the Housing Division of the Department of Business and Industry to give priority to projects that provide a preference for women who are veterans, women who were previously incarcerated, survivors of domestic violence, and elderly women who do not have a stable or adequate living arrangements. The bill is effective on October 1, 2023, but I'd like to make a couple of comments. It started out as a bill to try to find housing for women veterans. In 1973, the draft ended. And prior to that, women were not drafted, but women were still signing up. I have a friend in Vegas, Sergeant Dixie Thomas, first sergeant retired, military police, who spent 2 years in Vietnam. Most people didn't even know women were over there. But who do you think took care of the soldiers and the other military members when they were injured? Many of you probably saw the newscasts night after night, right after September the 1st, and you saw people who were killed in IEDs. An IED is just a fancy word for there was a bomb that went off because it's an improvised explosive device. And most of those IEDs went off under fuel trucks. And I'm going to get graphic because I need you to understand why I'm so passionate about this. If you weren't killed in the blast, if you survived the blast, guess what you did? You walked around trying to find the pieces of your friends who were blown up. Women did that too. There are women who suffered TBI, traumatic brain injury. Women right now who are veterans who are still suffering from PTSD. And oh, by the way, there are also women who are suffering from military sexual trauma. And to say thank you for your service, I always tell people, miss me on that. Because unless you're doing something tangible to thank veterans, your words ring hollow. We can all point to something that we've done for men who are veterans. Housing. I tell somebody, I say, tell me what you see when I say veteran. I see a man, I see exactly. But some of the women who are veterans and unhoused have children. And they fought in those last 2 wars. And I mentioned 1973 because I think it's important for us to understand that after 1973, anybody who served did so because they wanted to. They were not drafted. And certainly women were not drafted. And so I led this bill with veterans, women veterans, but as I was talking to them, some of them also fit other categories here. You don't have to vote for this. You don't. But I'm just saying, come November, when people will be talking about, we honor our veterans, miss me on that. Miss me on that. We stand up and we pledge allegiance to the flag every time we open this chamber. Do you know why we can do that? The liberty and the freedom to do that was paid for in blood, sweat, and tears, and some women lost their limbs. I'm not fussing, I'm just disappointed because we haven't done this before this time. And women paid the price as well. There are some veteran women who also occupy formerly incarcerated. You know why? And one of them passed away. I knew one of them passed away 4 years ago. She testified on a bill that Senator Joyce Woodhouse and I had about how she was sexually molested, and she fought off her attackers, and because she fought and they were injured, she went to jail. Some women veterans who occupy also the category of DV survivors. Some women also occupy the category of housing insecure. So when I see this bill, these 4 little lines, 5 lines that I just read, there's a lot more to it than that. A lot more to it than that. There'll be some that say, well, I don't want preferences. Okay, then you take your you-know-what to war. This is for the people who didn't run. This is for the people who decided to fight for this country and to fight for freedom and left their families behind while many people were afraid to do so. You don't have to vote for this bill. You don't. But what I am saying is if you have any ounce of courage and gratitude for the people, I'm leading with women veterans, if you have any gratitude at all for the sacrifices that they have made, I urge you to vote yes. That's how you say thank you for your service.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Oh, there we go. Okay. Just hits. All right. Secretary will close the roll. The ayes are 18, the nays are 3. SB 363 has received the constitutional majority and is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 371, introduced by Government Affairs, revises provisions governing local governments, the people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none. Section 3, this act becomes effective on July 1, 2023. End of bill.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 371 authorizes county commissioners and other local bodies to enact rent control and other affordable housing ordinances.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Secretary will close the roll. The ayes are 12, The nays are 9. SB 371 has received the constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 386, introduced by Commerce and Labor, revises provisions related to barbering. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1 and Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none. Section 2, this act becomes effective on July 1, 2023. End of bill.
Senator Spearman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 386 authorizes an applicant for a barber license who fails the required examination to retake it within a year without additional requirements. In addition, the bill authorizes an applicant for an apprentice license to retake the exam up to 3 times within 6 months without additional requirements. If such applicants do not retake the exam within the required time frame, they must fulfill specific additional requirements before being eligible to take the exam. And the bill is effective on 1 July 2023.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Does anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. We have 21 yeas, 0 nays. SB 386 has received the constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 418, introduced by Judiciary, revises provisions relating to candidates to the office of District Judge. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1 and Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none. Section 4 and Section 4. End of bill.
Senator Scheibel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 418 requires that, in addition to a declaration of candidacy, a candidate for judicial office must file with the appropriate filing officer a questionnaire prescribed by the Supreme Court that includes information on, but is not limited to, the candidate's education and qualifications for the office he or she seeks to fill. The filing officer shall post the completed questionnaire on his or her website.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. 21 ayes, 0 nays. SB 418 has received the constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 424, introduced by Government Affairs, revises provisions relating to the Nevada Transportation Authority. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1 and Section 1.
Are there any amendments?
There are none. Section 7, this act becomes effective upon passage and approval. End of bill.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 424 prohibits the Nevada Transportation Authority from accepting any petition to intervene on behalf of a person who has filed a protest against the granting of a certificate of public convenience and necessity or permit as a contract motor carrier. The authority may hold a hearing to make determinations regarding an application for a certificate or permit if, after reviewing certain information provided by the applicant and inspecting the operations of the applicant, the authority cannot make a determination as to whether an applicant has complied with applicable requirements. An application will be deemed approved, and the authority is required to issue a certificate or permit if the application is not approved or denied within 9 months.
Are there any remarks on the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will close the roll. We have 21 yeses, 0 nays. SB 424 has received the constitutional majority and is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
That concludes Order Business 13 on the first agenda.
Okay, Order of Business 16, remarks from the floor, introduction of guests. Okay, seeing none, we will now go to Agenda 2, Order of Business 4, reports of committees.
Mr. President, your Committee on Commerce and Labor, to which was referred Senate Bill number 106, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation amend and do pass as amended. Signed, Senator Pat Spearman, Chair. End of reports.
Order of Business 8, waivers and exemptions.
April 20th, 2023, the Fiscal Analysis Division, pursuant to Joint Standing Rule 14.6, has determined the eligibility for exemption of Senate Bill number 143, signed Wayne Thorley, Fiscal Analysis Division. End of notices.
Order of Business 12, second reading.
Senate Bill 22, introduced by Government Affairs, revises provisions relating to the publication of legal notices. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
I have amendment number 472, proposed by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of Amendment 472.
If there are no objections, so ordered. Senator Flores.
I move for the adoption of Amendment 472 to Senate Bill 22.
You've heard the motion. Senator Flores.
Amendment 472 clarifies that any legal notice may be additionally published on the Internet website of a newspaper, include certain provisions regarding Internet outage or service interruptions, and clarifies language on continuous postings.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 22 as amended is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
Senate Bill 143, introduced by Senator Neal, revises provisions relating to discrimination in housing. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
I have amendment number 459, proposed by the Senate Committee on Government Affairs.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of Amendment number 459.
If there are no objections, so ordered. Senator Flores.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of Amendment 459 to Senate Bill 143.
You've heard the motion. Senator Flores.
Amendment 459 revises circumstances that are a discriminatory practice, including refusing to rent or lease a dwelling because of an arrest record if the applicant has not been prosecuted in relation to any arrest or conviction, or if the applicant has been acquitted, granted a pardon, or exonerated, has served his or her sentence and been released, or has had his or her record sealed, and revises the bill with regard to certain properties by increasing the application of certain provisions based on the number of dwellings.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 143 as amended is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
Senate Bill 146, introduced by Senators Lang, Spearman, and Dignate, revises provisions relating to health care. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
I have amendment number 230, proposed by the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services.
Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
If there are no objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt the amendment.
You've heard the motion. Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendment 230 to Senate Bill 146 adds a new section prescribing the provisions in which an applicant is authorized to participate in a network established by a health carrier.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 146 as amended is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
Senate Bill 161, introduced by Senators Scheibel, et cetera, provides for the use of certain federal benefits to purchase menstrual products. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
I have amendment number 352, proposed by the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services.
Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
If there are no objections, so ordered. Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt the amendment.
You've heard the motion. Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendment number 352 to Senate Bill 161 requires the Department of Health and Human Services to authorize recipients of benefits provided under specific programs to use such benefits to purchase menstrual products to the extent authorized by federal law and to the extent of federal funding is available.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 161 as amended is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
Senate Bill 192, introduced by Health and Human Services, revises provisions relating to county hospitals. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
I have amendment number 353, proposed by the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services.
Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
If there are no objections, so ordered. Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt the amendment.
You've heard the motion. Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendment 353 to Senate Bill 192 authorizes a board of hospital trustees or any hospital governing board appointed to employ dentists and fix their compensation.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 192 as amended is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
Senate Bill 348, introduced by Senators Danyate and Orenshaw and Assemblywoman Gonzalez, etc., revises provisions relating to health facilities. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
The amendment to this bill was withdrawn by the chair, and there are no further amendments.
Okay, it's ordered to the general file. All right. Okay.
Senate Bill 410, introduced by Senator Orenshaw, revises provisions relating to juvenile justice. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
I have amendment number 416, proposed by the Senate Committee on Judiciary.
Senator Scheibel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of Amendment 416.
If no objections, so ordered. Senator Scheibel.
I move to adopt Amendment 416 to Senate Bill 410.
You've heard the motion. Senator Scheibel.
The amendment clarifies that if an employee has appealed the substantiation of a report of child abuse or neglect, but a hearing has not yet occurred through no fault of the employee, the Department of Juvenile Justice Services must extend the amount of time for the hearing to occur and a decision to be rendered. The amendment also provides that an employee arrested for certain criminal offenses must resolve the matter within 180 days, except under specific circumstances set forth in the bill.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 410 as amended is ordered reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
Senate Bill 441, introduced by Senator Dondero Loop, revises provisions relating to public health. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Okay, SB 441 is ordered to the general file. Senator Dondero Loop.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill number 143 be taken from the position on general file and be re-referred to the committee upon reprint. Thank you very much.
If there are no objections, so ordered.
That concludes Order of Business 9 and Order of Business 12.
Okay, Order of Business 13, general file.
Senate Bill 260, introduced by Senators Dondero Loop, etc., and Assemblywoman Anderson, revises provisions relating to certain persons providing referrals to group housing for persons who are aged. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 into Section 1.
Is there an amendment to the bill?
I have amendment number 495, proposed by Senator Danyate.
Senator Donate.
Mr. President, can I get a 1-minute recess, please?
1 minute recess. Senate is back in order. We are on SB 260 on Order Business 13, General File. Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
If there are no objections, so ordered. Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt the amendment.
You've heard the motion. Senator Donate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendment 495 to Senate Bill 260 prescribes authorized methods for determining the amount of compensation that a senior living community referral agency receives from a senior living community, and it removes the term unlicensed from all provisions.
Thank you. Are there any remarks on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 260, as amended, is ordered, reprinted, and engrossed, and to the general file.
That concludes Order of Business 13 on the second agenda.
We are on Order Business 16, remarks from the floor, introduction of guests. Seeing none, we will go to the third agenda. Order of Business 12, second reading.
Senate Bill 106, introduced by Senator Severs-Gansert, revises provisions relating to ophthalmic dispensing. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1 into Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
I have amendment number 401, proposed by the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor.
Senator Spearman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
If there are no objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate adopt amendment number 401 to Senate Bill 106.
You've heard the motion. Senator Spearman.
Amendment 401 to Senate Bill 106 does the following. It deletes sections 1 through 5 and 7 from the bill. Amends Section 6 to exempt out-of-state prescription eyewear sales and related activities from the provisions of law governing ophthalmic dispensing, and changes the bill's effective date to October 1, 2023.
Are there any remarks from the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. SB 106, as amended, is ordered, reprinted, engrossed, and to the general file.
That concludes Order of Business 12 on the third agenda and the business of the desk for this legislative day.
Okay, Order of Business 16, remarks from the floor, introduction of guests. Seeing none, Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that the Senate stand in adjournment until the hour of 11 a.m. on Friday, April 21st, 2023.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.